now to what we're looking at in November. We're 60 some odd days away from the election, and we got people saying, I don't like either candidate, I like both candidates, I like this, whatever. Doesn't matter what your thought is. What do you do when you come to an election as a Christian? Any election, not just this one, but it's a city election or any other election you come to. The answer is you look for righteousness. The scriptures tells us in Proverbs 14:34 that righteousness exalts a nation, sends a reproach to any people. Righteousness is the public policies you have. Because you see in the Bible, you have righteous kings like David who came up with a really bad policy to number the people, which caused a curse to come on the nation. 50,000 people were destroyed. You also have King Hezekiah, a good king, except what he did by opening up and sharing military secrets with the Assyrians caused God to bring a curse on the nation, and the whole nation gets in trouble. So you can have good leaders that do really bad things. So it's not the quality of your leader, it's the quality of the policies you have. God, you remember even Elijah, after he confronted the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, he left and went to the cave and said, I'm the only one left. God, get me out of here. God said, shut up. There's 7,000 guys that never been there. 7,000 people there. But you see, what happened was they all went through 3.5 years of famine because of the wicked policies of Ahab and Jezebel. Even the good guys had problems in the nation because bad policies produce God's result on a nation. So you look for the right kind of policies. And looking for the right kind of policies, what do you look for in an election that will establish righteousness? Well, if you go back to what God did in talking to Isaiah. Isaiah's a prophet. Isaiah lived through the reign of Manasseh. Manasseh is the most wicked king in Judah's history. And Isaiah has to minister through that. And significantly, God tells Isaiah in chapter 1, I'm going to get this nation back to me. I know they're really screwed up right now, really twisted off, but I'm going to get them back to me. And here's how I'm going to do it. And so in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 26, this is what God says. I will give you judges as at the beginning and lawyers as at the first, and then. Notice this. A cause condition. If I give you judges and lawyers that are the right kind, then you'll be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Now notice God bases the righteousness of an area, community, state, nation on the type of judges it has. And if you think about everything we find in the culture war, it came out of courtrooms, not out of legislatures. Whether it's abortion, whether it's same-sex marriage, whether it's transgender, whether it's anything you want to pick that we fight in the culture war, it came out of courts, not out of legislatures. If you get the right kind of judges, you get righteousness that exalts a nation. And that's what God promised way back in Isaiah 1. So judges is a huge consideration when you come to the election in November. The same consideration also should be extended on Genesis 12:3, because you remember Genesis 12:3, God tells Abram, he says, I'm going to make a nation out of you. Whoever blessed will be blessed, whoever cursed will be cursed. I'm going to make a nation out of you, and however people treat that nation, that's the way I'm going to treat them. Real simple stuff. Now, that's called a covenant. And we know from Psalms 105 that God says, I keep my covenant for 1,000 generations. Well, we're about 200 generations to Abraham, so we got a long way to go. Covenant's still active, still alive, still in effect. We know from Numbers 23 that God says, look, I'm not a man. I don't lie. If I told you that, it's going to happen. So 1,000 generations is going to go, which means that the way America treats Israel is significant to what happens to our blessings or our position. So that's another thing I'll vote on. I don't have to like the candidates. I don't have to like anything about it. What am I going to get for judges? What am I going to get for the nation of Israel? Is it going to be something that God can bless this nation for? And then I'll take you to something else that happened. If you remember with Jacob and his 12 sons, great family, except they didn't get along well. All the brothers ganged up kind of on Joseph, and so they sold Joseph in slavery. And then a famine hits the world at that time, and Joseph ends up being the one who can save them. And so they all moved to Egypt, and they moved to Egypt, and that went good for a while, but then they end up being the slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And after 400 years of slavery, God raises up a leader to help free them from that. And so they go through those 10 plagues that happen, and the 10 plagues go through. You have the 10 plagues that happen, and God leads them out of Egypt and finally destroys the enemy there at the Red Sea. And so after he destroys the enemy at the Red Sea, he leads them on through with a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. And after he gets them out in the middle of the desert, he said, okay, let's have a little time out right here. He said, I got you away. Nobody's chasing you. You don't know where you're going yet, so let's just stop right here and let's get a nation built. And so God there at the mountain gives them 613 laws. Those 613 laws, you guys have been slaves your whole life. You're about to be a nation now. You're going to be a great nation. And here's the laws that govern your nation. And those laws cover every conceivable issue you can think of. They cover taxation. They cover immigration. They cover military. They cover animal rights and health care. And you name it, because God built a nation. Everything that a nation needs to know is in those 613 laws. So everything we need to know for any presidential election covers 30 to 40 issues typically. You look at their websites, it'll be 30 to 40. Great. God covers all of it. except God has priorities. Not every issue is equal to every other issue. And that's why what God did says, let me give you my top 10. You know, there's 10 that you really need to know about here. And those top 10 we call the 10 Commandments. What's significant about the 10 Commandments is Exodus 23, God says this is the tenor of my laws. I've given you a complete legal code, but here's the heart, the soul, the guts. This is the backbone of it. These 10 right here. So these are the most important ones. These are more important than they're all important, and they're all God's word, but he does put priorities on it. So when you look at these 10 commandments, you have the first one up top that says, I'm the Lord thy God. You know what? That's public religious acknowledgments, which involves religious conscience. So we're the candidates on protecting. Are you going to prosecute bakers? Are you going to prosecute florists? Are you going to protect them? Conscience. That's the issue right now. Which candidate's going to protect the rights of conscience, and which one's going to pursue an agenda that continues to persecute Christians for their rights of conscience? That's an issue to deal with. Another one that the Ten Commandments deals with, thou shalt not commit adultery. Now what's that? God says, listen up. Sex belongs with a man and a woman inside a lifelong union. We call that marriage. God's made it real clear. Sexuality, this is where it occurs, which means anything outside of that, whether it's premarital sex, whether it's extramarital sex, adultery, whether it is homosexual sex, anything outside of man, woman, lifelong union, wrong stuff. So we call that marriage protection. See, that's an issue this time as well. Where do the candidates stand on simple man and woman and all other issues surrounded with it? That's something you look at because that's in God's top 10. Another one that comes in God's top 10 is don't kill. Don't shed innocent blood. Shedding innocent blood throughout the Bible, every time, 100% will get a curse on a nation if you shed innocent blood. It's just that simple. By the way, that's abortion. That's shedding innocent blood. That's a big issue. That's one of God's top 10 is you don't shed innocent blood. If you do, the nation's going to be in trouble. So you look at all of those issues. Those are all top tier issues that come out of the Bible. You take those 5 issues and going through those 5 issues, again, real simple. You got abortion, you got marriage protection, sexuality, religious acknowledgments and conscience, judges, and Israel. That's what you look at first thing when you, if immigration's a big issue to you, great. It can be number 6 on your list. It can't be number 1 on your list. If environment's a big issue to you, great. It can be number 6 on your list. It can't be number 1 on your list. Whatever your issue is, these are the ones that God says, this is the top stuff. This is the stuff where righteousness does exalt a nation, and that's what we want. And so as we go into this election, keep that in mind. Look at the biblical priorities that we have. Election 2016, whether you're electing dog catcher or president of the United States, those are issues to look at. God bless you guys. Thanks for letting me share with you.